you can have a million roles and tools and strategies, but in the end, we have to remember who powers them. You do. The tool doesn't run itself. You run that. So it's your energy, it's your attention, it's your intention, it's your presence.
Hey you, Brooke Jean here with Brooke Jean Unperfected. I'm a licensed professional counselor, coach, mama, and your keep it real guide to the freedom that's available to you in a life unperfected. If you're a high-achieving, perfectionistic, often anxious woman feeling stuck, frozen, and maybe even downright frustrated, you're in the right place. If you're anything like me, you've done everything society told you to do that would promise you success. You've got the job, you've got the husband, you've got the car, you've got the vacations, you've got the 401k, and yet underneath it all, when you're really honest with yourself, you're deeply disconnected and unfulfilled. Here is where we talk about letting go of who you think you're supposed to be so that you can get busy creating a life that you actually love. Everything healing, revealing, and rising is on the table. And we don't hold anything back around here. So buckle up, babe, because you are entering a vortex of your most juicy transformation. One where we dethrone perfectionism so you can access more energy, creativity, and vitality. I am so happy and grateful that you are here. Hello, you beautiful being. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod. I'm Brooke Jean, your host, and I'm so happy and grateful that you're here. This week, I got to sit down with the magnificent Sherianna Boyle. Sherianna Boyle is the founder of Emotional Detox Coaching, creator of the Cleanse Method, author of 11 books, and host of Just Ask Spirit podcast. It was so fun to get to know this extraordinary woman more and hear her story of becoming a mother and changing careers and stepping into her relationship with spirit and how that's guided her and her work and her relationships. She is definitely very special. There were so many synchronicities in our conversation. She has a ton of experience working with emotions, so a lot of alignment there. And I cannot wait for you to hear her story, hear her message, and learn a thing or two. Enjoy. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Unperfected Pod. Sherianna Boyle, welcome to the podcast. We had a little bit of a journey getting here
we
this
did,
morning.
but we're here.
We were just laughing, listener, that technology tries to stop us, but we will not let that happen. We have a mission. We have a voice. We're ready to share it. We get to show up messy as is. And I just feel like it's starting off on brand with it being unperfected, right?
Yeah, that was not perfect at all.
I love it. All right, girl. Speaking of unperfected, tell me about your story. So the work that you do in the world, you're an author, and you do a lot of really cool things. So share with us the work that you do in the world and like your story of how you came into it, because that is usually the beautiful, messy, spiritual part that we all love to hear. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So I'm primarily a writer, and then I write and teach what I write about. And my latest book is Just Ask Spirit, and it is kind of spirit related how I got into the whole writing journey. I had left a job that I had been in for years, and because I was pregnant, so I took a leave of absence, and then I got pregnant again. And so I was like, and at that point, I still thought I was going to go back to that job someday, but I started to write about, well, if I go back, how's it going to be different? Because now my life is so different. I can't work the hours I was working and do, talking about trying to be perfect. I can't even live up to those expectations that I created for myself. Kind of put myself in that position. So I started writing about it. I ended up self-publishing a book. And lo and behold, a little bit later, I'm at a preschool with one of my daughters. And someone approached me and said, I see that you self-published a book. I said, yeah. And she said, you do a lot of mindfulness stuff. And we're back in 2012. So it wasn't as out there, right, as available. I said, yes. And she said, I work for a publisher. Will you write for us? So
Mm.
mine was divine synchronous. Yeah.
Wow. That is like every writer's dream, girl.
Yeah. Divine synchronicity and right place,
Wow.
right time. I had no
Wow.
idea what was propelling me to write a book. I wasn't planning on it at all. I truly was just listening to my own inner spirit, just write about it. You got to work this out. You got to figure this out. And for me, writing just felt like it was a way to figure it out. And then before you know, I'm like, a lot of people could hear this. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people are struggling with this. Maybe I'll self-publish it. I didn't even tell anybody, Brooke. My
What were you
my
writing
husband.
about? What were you writing about? Wait, hold on. What was your first job or the job before you had your daughters? And then what were you writing about?
So I was a school psychologist, but I was in a school that did not have a lot understaffed, like a lot of schools today. So I was doing many hats, wearing many hats. We didn't have a school counselor. So I was a school psychologist. I was doing the evaluations, I was doing the counseling. We didn't have a school attendance officer. I was the school attendance officer. We didn't have a vice principal. I turned into the vice principal some days. I mean,
Wow.
it was a lot.
Wow.
And the school was wonderful. It was a wonderful place, wonderful building. It's just the way it is. The budget is the budget. So it was too much for one person. And so I was like, how am I going to go back to that? And so I wrote a book called Powered by Me. And that was my reminder to myself and who I was writing to that you can have a million roles and tools and strategies. But in the end, we have to remember who powers them. You do. The tool doesn't run itself, you run that. So it's your energy, it's your attention, it's your intention, it's your presence. And so it was really about learning that that it's like kind of reminds me of creating a brand, Brooke. People create an image. We have to
Mhm.
remember, well, what's selling, or a product? What is really selling that? Who's really behind that? Is it the packaging, or is it what's inside the packaging? Is it the story? Is it the energy? So anyway, I wrote that, and then the person must have read it. That's all I can think of. They
How'd they
must have.
get it? Because you said you self-published, which
I
is a journey in and of
self-publish.
itself.
I probably maybe I'm imagining I must have told a couple moms at the school. I'm imagining maybe I mentioned it or something, and then they got their hands on it. So here's the interesting part. So they asked me to write a book, and then they said, "Can you write it in 5 weeks?"
Whoa. No, they didn't.
They did.
Okay. Okay, that
This is
changes the game a little. That changes the game. That changes the deal. And you've got two girls, I'm assuming, at home at that time.
actually maybe the third one was
Oh, wow.
around.
Wow.
Yeah, because she napped the most. So by time I really got into my writing career, the two older ones, one was in preschool, one was in elementary school. And then the third one was, God just sent me this napper.
Oh.
Every mother's dream. 3 hours.
Well, you needed that though. Like God knew
So she
if
was
we're
like,
gonna write books, we need to write
oh,
books,
trust
honey.
me. My worst fear during that time was her giving up her nap.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
because
like,
that was your work hours.
I was in the thick of it. I had signed a contract, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God she hung in there, man. She was a heavy napper till almost 4.
Wow. Amazing. And that's
Yeah.
one of those like pressures on moms that I think doesn't get talked about enough or certainly doesn't get acknowledged. Like here you are on a contract to deliver and write a book. And it's completely contingent upon something that is totally out of your control, which is your daughter's nap. Like that is an element of pressure and of work environment that it just like isn't even acknowledged in the world. But it's so real.
It was stressful. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's stressful.
I'm
Are
not going
you
to lie.
kidding?
When the dog would bark or somebody, I'd be like, is it over? Is my time over?
Yeah.
So I don't know how I did it. The only thing I can say now, looking back, is that was the beginning of me really channeling spirit.
Ooh, okay. Say more
Yeah,
about that. So you have somebody come up to you and say, "We'd like for you to write for our publishing company," which is literally every writer's dream.
it
And you say
really.
yes, and they say, "Oh, but it needs to be done in 5 weeks."
And I did
So
it in
you
5 weeks.
you did it in 5 weeks.
I did it in 5 weeks. Yeah.
And what did you write about? And how did heck did you
That
do it
was
in
a
5
book
weeks?
about anxiety. So they had a series going on and it was for childhood anxiety, and they knew I was a school psychologist. I worked in elementary school. I was in the thick of it. So I would that's really why they approached me is they saw what I wrote about, what I was about, and they wanted something more mindful in nature. And so I was like, yeah, and then after that they asked me to write another one and they
Mm,
gave me 9 weeks. And I said yes
whoa.
because I loved it.
Wow.
Like something was waking up in
Yeah.
me, like something felt like I really did. I still do love when I'm not writing. It feels like something's missing. I can
Mhm.
go for periods of time just to take a break, you know?
Of
So,
course.
yeah. So for the first few, that's how I got to 11. The first few were like bang them out.
Wow.
And nowadays, like so many people are writing books, I don't think they need to look like they were. I'm not sure. I think they're getting inundated, with so many submissions. But yeah, it was the right place, right time, right fit. I had a great napper.
And
I
you were
loved
meant to do it. You
it.
were meant to do it.
Everything felt great. And I was learning a lot and learning. I was engaged in it. But yeah, I'm not going to lie. It's not that it didn't come with its fair share of stress. I don't even think my husband realized what I was doing, honestly.
Mhm. What did he think you were doing?
Well, he knew I was writing,
Mhm.
but I think sometimes, and this is where women, we have this thing that unless I'm bringing money in,
Mm,
it's not as important as everybody else. I was bringing some in, I was getting some advances, but it wasn't like what he was bringing in. I mean, I was taking a break from my job. So I was working other kinds of jobs. Like at night, I was just teaching parent education. So I was finding other ways to do my job as a mom. And that was all very helpful because I would be teaching parents who were really stressed and I would bring it into the books, I'd
mhm.
understand, what it's like. So yeah, so that was the beginning. But I do feel like it was all definitely spirit led and listening and being guided every step of the way.
How did you realize that's what it was?
Well, I've always been connected, like all of us, we're all connected to spirit. And when I was younger, I used to write and I would submit to contests and things like that. And then as I came towards college, which I think a lot of us experience, like you become a senior, you become like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? All of a sudden, I got very serious. I mean, I was having fun too. Don't get me wrong, but I was getting also very stressed. And what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? Where am I going to live? God forbid I can't stay in this town. Like, get me the hell out. I mean, I was like, what, like that. And then as I got, the more serious I got, the more busy. Let's call it busy. Very goal oriented. I say in the book, Just Ask Spirit, I was feeling just enough for the day to day to be able to connect, to be able to do what I needed to do but I wasn't feeling enough to heal. And
Mm,
so it's like running on a battery. It's not fully charged, but it's not out of juice. It's right there. And then later on, I would write Emotional Detox, and that would change my life. And then I wrote 3 books on that. And then I realized that it started to click. I'm channeling, you
and what
know.
were some of the signs? Just that it was coming through you?
Yeah, the systems that I was creating, how the building of the systems, meaning emotional detox system, the Just Us spirit, they were telling me. So I wrote a book called Energy in Action. It's about manifesting. And they told me, spirit, my guides told me that a lot of people have talked about like the spiritual laws. And they were telling me what no one's talking about is how they're connected to light. And you need to connect them to light. And they would guide me. And I'd say, oh gosh, you're kidding me. Why didn't you tell me this before? Right. And so I wrote that book really channeling, okay, this light. So it's called The Rays of Light, which are infinite light. And I talk about the light in Just Ask Spirit as well. And then after I wrote and connected the light, then the channelings for Just Ask Spirit would come in terms of teaching people how to connect to spirit, how to recognize spirit, how to understand the difference between spirit and ego, but most importantly, how to recognize the way the anatomy of our emotions are such a big part of developing our intuition and opening our levels of consciousness. And so they have been a wonderful support for me. I couldn't do it if I didn't have. So I drop in when I write.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, oh, let me ask you this, because one of the phenomenons that I've observed in my working with clients and in my own journey is this process that I call heal, reveal, and rise. And as women, we have not been taught, nobody actually has been taught how to process emotion, how to metabolize emotion, how to learn to read emotion. And for many of us women who are very emotional, highly sensitive, our emotions are actually our spiritual superpowers. But we don't know that until we learn to harness them. And we have to heal first, like the trauma and the triggers out of the body to then kind of know like what is what in terms of those emotional waves to then learn to ride them. And so I've also observed like as we heal, we reveal what I believe is our like purpose, our reason for being here, our authentic expression of who we are. And then we can reveal that. And once we're in that place of alignment, then we can rise. And that's when I teach energy work and leadership and things like that. So, what did you have to heal to reveal your gifts spiritually?
Well, Emotional Detox, that series, but the core book, I call it the mama of the books, that is all about marriage.
Mm,
So healing, two people healing. So it wasn't just, not just about a marriage, but it's about life and, moving again. We start deciding what are we going to do and what's our career. And we haven't healed what happened in our childhood.
mm,
And then you go out, of course, and meet someone, and you have two people who haven't had that work, done that inner work. And so that's why I said emotional detox kind of changed everything. And so I did do the work with that one and channeled cleanse, what I call cleanse, which is an acronym for the 7 steps of emotional detox. So that's the process of processing your emotions. And that changed everything. That from that experience, it came, I was in a marriage where it wasn't horrible. Like we were two great parents, but we were very wounded people. I feel like I'm not married to the same person. So I feel like I've had 2 marriages with the same person. And so that's that emotional detox book kind of talks about what that looks like and rebirthing that.
mm.
And so that's been a beautiful thing. And then, of course, that led into the other books. But yeah, I think I had to heal my marriage. I had to heal myself. I do a lot of forgiveness work.
Mm.
Of course, it's not just the marriage, it goes down the line, you know, your father, your mother, and the whole 9 yards. And I
Oh,
just
yep.
retreat. I just did just a spirit retreat. And you're so right, Brooke, in what you're saying. I mean, everybody there, we were there to connect with spirit, but there was a tremendous amount of healing happening. And as that healing, you're absolutely correct. As that healing happens, people become naturally more open.
Mm. Yes. And, I want to say healing is beautiful. And yes, you do want to like go back into your childhood and right some of the wrongs, but you don't get stuck there forever. And people think like it's about blaming your parents or whatever. And it's not. It's just like our parents are wounded just like we're wounded, and it's going back and like giving that child what it needed when it was growing up developmentally and loving it and remembering who you were before the world told you who you were supposed to be, and forgiving yourself for the actions that you took that weren't in alignment but were maybe a survival mechanism, and forgiving your parents for the actions that they took that weren't in alignment with heart and spirit but were survival mechanisms. And on the other side of that, facing it and sitting with the pain and going through the rage cycles and all of it is forgiveness and release. And when we release that shit from the body, we become this like open channel, open vessel. I call it open for business, where you like remember like who you are and why you're here. And then you also are open to guidance from the divine, whatever your understanding of what the divine is. And that's certainly been my journey too, of like, I was so buried in trauma response. Like my favorite trauma response was perfectionism, but then the pressure of the world I had created for myself in that way, in that kind of proving intense energy, was really shitty coping mechanisms, drinking, eating, and spending. And so I was just like always in this shame spiral. And so that kept me disconnected from self and spirit for a very long time. And that
Yeah.
is a very lonely existence that burns you out pretty darn quickly. And then when I started to like heal, well, all of a sudden there was space for like intuition and spiritual relationship. And now, I have a date with a divine every morning, and I call it my most important business meeting that I'll ever have. So
Love
tell me
that.
how your relationship has not only developed, but strengthened over time. And now you're channeling it in your latest book, full blown, which is so exciting.
Yeah. I mean, they were all channeled looking back. I just didn't realize I was channeling.
That's cool.
Yeah. And just as spirit, it's really a call to serve. I mean, when you're channeling and you feel spirit moving within you, it feels like you're serving and you're supporting because they do need our help. They do need,
Mm,
we work together with spirit. So, in terms of channeling, I mean, I, like you, I have a solid morning practice
mhm,
every morning, and I go through exactly what I write about. The cleanse I write about. So the acronym for processing your emotions, it's the same acronym in Just As Spirit, only now we're using it in a new way. And so I go through the steps and I ask spirit and connect with spirit, or sometimes I just receive something from spirit and I jot it down for the day. And it's almost like a little anchor. It's like the theme of the day.
mhm,
It's a little thing that you focus on. Okay, this is what today is about. And
mhm.
then I thread it in different ways. How can I integrate this into my life? So it's like living it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a journey. So it isn't just a one and done. People are used to hearing like, go get a spiritual reading, which is all sorts of fun and everything. But when you step in, for me, Just As Spirit is a pathway. And I actually call it the 7777 step pathway in the book. There's 7 steps to emotional processing. There's a couple pathways I provide there with the 7 archangel pathway.
Mm,
There's 7 elements. There are 7 chakras. I mean, it's all, and 7777 pathway is, that number there is about purpose. When you see
mm.
that strong sevens, it's about spiritually awakening and aligning.
Oh, that's so good. So, what is the first? Can you share with us what the first step, just the first step is of the
Sure.
7-step process, at least for emotionally detoxing, and also how that relates if the listener has a
Yeah.
kiddo who's struggling as well? Because even though this podcast is for the mama, because there's so many parenting
Yeah.
resources out there, I want to make sure we focus on the mama. I know there's mamas that are going, I have an anxious kiddo and it absolutely affects my everyday. And what can I do to help? So, what is step one?
Well, I mean, you can ask spirit for help. That's the first thing I'll say. So I will remember. And that was like the big, like, light bulb moment of our retreat. People were saying at the end was, I just never think to ask spirit for help. Right. So you
Totally.
can ask for help for, and I know what that's like to raise children with anxiety. And I've worked with numerous families and children with anxiety and have written 3 books on it. So the first step in terms of emotional detox is about clearing reactivity. And yeah, a lot of times I will tell you, for one of just from my personal experiences, I never realized how much my reactivity was impacting my children. So if you have someone with anxiety, I know it makes sense. You want to help them, you want to fix them, you want to make them better, but they will really greatly benefit if you focus on yourself. That, remember, emotions are contagious. It's real. The research shows it. It's called emotional contagion. So they can pick up. So if we can have a smile on our face, we can do the part, but kids with anxiety have sniffed you out.
Totally. Totally. They can read you from a mile away,
You're
and
not
their nervous
feeling
system
them.
is reacting to your nervous system.
Exactly. So the very first step is called, in the emotional detox one, cleanse step is clear reactivity. And for just us spirit, for that practice, the C is connecting to light.
Mm.
Both will actually calm your nervous system down. Connecting to light calms your nervous system, grounds you, and learning how to clear reactivity. So that means learning to tone down your nervous system so that it doesn't get you out of fight or flight or freeze response. So I give people many tools for how to do that very simply on a daily basis, and also things that you can teach your children. But I think the most important thing, and I know we don't want to hear this, moms. I didn't want to hear it either. And it happens in marriages and partnerships too.
It's
And
so true.
men are just as sensitive as women.
Oh, yeah.
I know
Girl,
I tend to say women
we
are
know
sensitive
this.
and men are sensitive, and they're tired of not, I'm kind of a cheerleader for men, because I think sometimes, I know for me in my marriage, what I had to really work on was being a little, sometimes I was a little critical. I'd say a comment, and that's reactivity. That's how it shows up. Like, oh, the dishes aren't done.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Oh,
mean, like,
you breathe too loud
yeah,
next to me.
like, oh, right. Because we're exhausted mentally, physically, spiritually. And so it comes out maybe sarcasm or a comment.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these men are taking it as, I'm not good enough. I'm a piece
Mm-hmm.
of crap, you know, can't do anything right, but they're not talking about it. So,
Totally.
anyway, that first space and is really learning how to calm your body down, clear reactivity, know that it's not an emotion, it's a reaction. Or if you're even being silent about something or tiptoeing around someone or taking everything on yourself. That's another way we manage other people's emotions. I'll just do it. And I get it. Men and women are different. They don't, women are very good at multitasking. I think, we're doing the laundry, but really learning to calm down, I think, is the number one thing. Clear that reactivity. No, it's not feeling, it's reacting, and that will fuel it. Reacting will always pull people apart.
Mm.
Emotions bring us back together. That's what my spirit guides told me.
Okay, say more about that. Because when you said it the first time, reactivity is a reaction, not an emotion. I was like, oh, let's talk more about that. When you say
Yeah.
reactivity, you're talking about anxiety. You're talking about some version of a trauma response, like a fight, flight, freeze, right?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, you have to get to know, what are my reactions. I think we have to get to know what are my emotions, but we also need to identify, how am I reacting? What does that look like for me? And
Mm-hmm.
it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be in touch with your body to be able to do that. You have to recognize the tightness, the tension. What does it feel like? It's hard to recognize it if you're never out of it. It becomes a way of life. You become desensitized to anything else. I think that My guides told me, and this came when I wrote Emotional Detox for Anxiety, my guides told me there's only one emotion, and that's love. Everything else is a reaction.
Whoa. I need to chew on that one for a minute, girl.
I did too, Brooke.
I need to chew on that one for a minute, right? You were a school psychologist. I'm a licensed professional counselor. We are
Oh,
out
okay.
here trying to name feelings. We are out here trying to identify. I noticed that actually like doesn't really help. We just need to move through it. But like as I'm actually processing this in the here and now, I'm using myself as an example. My reaction is to be irritable and to blame sometimes. Like I get like tight, hot, and I just like will blame or pick at or irritable, right? And when I
Yes.
really think about that, like that's not an emotion. That is like the armor and the defendant of the emotion, which is like fear. Like, I'm sad that you're not seeing me, or I'm feeling unseen and lonely, or I'm feeling bad and shame. Like, almost feel like the irritability is the bodyguard to shame or something. Like, but now you're even saying, like, not even shame is the emotion, like, love is the emotion.
That's all there is.
Would shame also be the defendant of not feeling loved? How
So
would
when
shame and love interact
my
in your
guy
framework?
my guides told me when I wrote Emotional Detox, which I needed very much at the time. Okay. I was writing what I needed. And
That's usually how channeling works.
exactly. And they told me again, there's only one emotion. They said, Sherry, there's only one emotion, love. And everything else is a reaction. When they said that to me, it changed everything because I literally was in the mindset. I have so many strong emotions happening right now. I'm going to be clearing these for the rest of my life. Like, this is going to take forever.
Everybody's like nodding. We're with you, babe. That is where we are currently at.
That's what I was thinking. Like, this is a lot. Like, how many more are there? Like, when will it ever end? That's when they said, Sherry, there's only one emotion. That's the way they talk, love. Everything else is a reaction. And that means it's under my control, Brooke, if it's a
Mm,
reaction.
whoa. Whoa. Wow. What am I going to do? Am I going to retire as a therapist and be a love coach?
You already are.
I know
You already are a
exactly.
love
I already
coach.
am. It's like it doesn't matter what your title is. We're all bringing people home to themselves, which is love, which is the one universal truth. So, like,
Yeah.
I already feel like love is the one universal truth. Love, for me, though, it wasn't an emotion, it was an expression, whether that be like an actual, like, energetic expression or a behavior. To me, love wasn't an emotion, it was an expression. So I'm trying to get my head behind love being an emotion. I'm definitely feeling that everything else is a reaction. And if that's true, then we are empowered to learn our reactions and to manage them, especially
Some
in
of
a way
them,
that's love influenced. What were you going to say?
yeah. And I think some of them are habits,
Oh, yeah. Well,
some of
they
those
also can become
reaction.
addictions.
Yeah.
Our reactions, we
It's
do
like
them so
taking a
many
drag of a
times.
cigarette. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a little hit, and often you're a counselor, what are you getting out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people ask that, are you getting something from that when you say that or act that way? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
And, just like when you take a puff of a cigarette, what is it? Something you're
Mm-hmm.
getting from that. Yeah, it's a lot to sink into, but for me, it kind of cleared a lot of needing to feel like I had so much, like back to the theme of your podcast, that feeling like I was a project and there was so much work to be done. And as we know in life, I mean, you're never done with your errands, you're never done with your chores, right? So it just kind of calmed me down when I got that message and let me know what I'm focused on, love, and being open to really learning about love. And what
Mm.
does it feel like? And what does it look like?
And what does that look like for you? What have you discovered about that recently?
Well, I think that being able to let go of the past
Mm,
is a form of love for
mhm.
yourself. Forgive. I think when you're dragging it around like a suitcase, that's not love.
That's definitely survival reaction, right? Or what
Yeah.
would you call
It,
that?
well, resistance,
Hmm.
which is
Resistance to love or resistance to what?
resistance to feeling,
Mm-hmm.
which are triggers. I mean, that's what I call, a trigger. I mean, how I define anxiety is an emotion looking to be processed, but can't because you won't let it. And triggers are reactions. So when you carry that suitcase around of the past, you're carrying your triggers with you.
Mm-hmm. So if love is the only emotion, is the trigger like I can't let myself feel love?
I think love is presence.
Okay. I can't let myself feel presence.
Yeah, there's a presence to it. There's a vulnerability. There's an authenticity. There's a
Mm,
lot of letting go.
mm,
And forgiveness definitely is involved in that, learning how to forgive,
mm,
acceptance. These are all higher levels and experiences.
mm-hmm,
It's releasing the judgments.
mm-hmm. That's another beautiful thing to really sit with is like love is presence and we feel anxiety because we don't want to just be with ourselves.
Well, we're not processing what we feel fully. And you have
Mm,
to be able to recognize that. Have I processed it? Yeah. Again, we talked a lot about this on the retreat that sometimes you might need to lean into something a little bit longer. You have
mhm,
to kind of feel it out and use your tools to move the energy, as you said before. So you can take any emotion, as you probably know, and your listeners know, you can take any of your emotions and you can convert it into love. So what we call fear can be converted and it's just vibration. So when you
mm,
move that energy of that emotion, it increases movement, it increases in frequency. Now we're
mhm,
in the love frequency, which is 500 and above. Shame is like 600. I mean, I'm not 660. So there's a
mhm,
big discrepancy. There's a big drop of energy between shame and the love. But it's baby steps because sometimes you do have to go through the other emotions on the way there to love. It's really hard to go from A to Z. So I think
mhm,
back to the theme of your podcast, try to take the expectations down. So we tend to think in black and white. Okay, if I'm not in fear, then I'm in love. Well, it's going to be a process.
mhm,
You might go from fear to courage,
mm, mhm,
or you might go from fear to neutral.
mhm,
And think of it. And then you slowly raise your vibration that way. So I would
mhm,
pull back, lower the bar a little bit on
mhm,
yourself.
mhm.
And I think that's going to help people a lot experience the journey to love.
Wow. So you're saying that all emotions can be converted to love, which is why love is the only emotion, but we do have to go through the process of processing them to get it to love. What do you call that process? Is that what transmutation is? Is that what alchemizing is? What is that?
Well, that's the cleanse process that I write about. It starts
Mm-hmm.
with the C, clear reactivity. The
Mm-hmm.
L is look inward, which is acknowledge your emotions, move the emotions. The E is emit, which is mantra, which I wrote a book on mantras. So I knew mantras were going to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Mantras are the conversion. I'm
Mm.
not affirmations, yes, but those came later. Those were more came out 80s. Mantras are ancient.
Okay.
There are thousands and thousands. They're like spiritual medicine. So mantra, emit, that's the E in cleanse. A is activate. So now that you've emit, now that you've raised the vibration, now you're going to be activating pretty much a different state now of mind, a different state of consciousness. And again, it's flexible in nature. And then the N is nourish, and that's receiving. And that's something that women have a hard time doing, and men. But a big part of everything, big part of emotional processing. And it's also a big part of connecting to spirit. It's not just about asking. You have to be available and open to receive the guidance.
Mm.
And then the S is surrender, which is your free will, which is the same for, the way I use it in both of those books. And that is, I have to allow it. I have to allow this conversion. I have to choose it. And then the E is the ease, which is I am. So everything always comes back to the I am, which is the state of oneness, meaning that there's no separation. Go through the conversion process from C to E. And in the Just Ask Spirit book, now you're going to start getting your messages. And I show people how to do that.
That's so good, Sherry. Oh, I cannot wait to read this book. It's so good. Like, I love a good process for things that are like almost hard to grasp. You know what I mean? Like when you can bring together like spirituality in a good process. Ooh,
You
I
need
get so
structure. You do
you
need
need
some,
structure.
you
Yeah.
do. Well, I learned that from the emotional detox work because I was in trauma when I wrote that book. I went through trauma. I actually said I can't write it. I went to the publisher. I said, I can't write this book. I'm a mess. Like I'm not okay because my marriage was not okay. And people can read about it in the book. It was not okay. And they were like, you're going to write this book. And I was like, you think so?
Hanging on by a thread? Am I really?
I'm like, you still want me to? I mean, my self-esteem was so low. I was willing to give it all up in a way. I was like, you might want another author on that title. I can't do it because I came up with the title. They were like, no, they could have. Publishers do. They can hand the title to another author and give them the job. But they said, no, it's going to be you. Thank God. And so, what I learned from trauma is you need structure. You can't say to someone in trauma, which I didn't know until I was in it. I was probably being like, you can't say, oh, try this. Oh, I went to this acupuncturist and she was great at this. And then I went to this therapist. Oh, really? You should eat this and you should drink that. Like someone in trauma is like, I can't even like put my feet on the floor right now.
Totally.
Like they're in shock, numb. They're in like they're just trying to like get a meal in, Best thing you could do for someone in trauma is bring them some freaking food.
Yeah. Literally remind them to breathe. Literally remind them to breathe.
Remind them to breathe or just tell them you love them or give them a hug.
Yeah.
It's not like you could try this and you could do this. And I'm like, I can't. I'm a mom of 3 kids in trauma. I'm surviving here. And so I learned from that there's got to be some kind of container for people.
Yeah. Yes. That's so big. And when people come through our door, it's like, let's create safety in the moment that you're in. Like, there's nothing more you need to do. There's nothing you need to become and fix. Let's feel our feet on the ground. Let's take a breath. And like, you've made it here. That's where we build from. And even like the clients that are like more high functioning and ready to do deeper work, I'm like, we do that work from a place of enoughness.
Wow, Brooke. I mean, I could have used you.
You
would have been perfect. Yes.
We do the place from like, you're already okay. And you get to feel better. But like people are already traumatized. They don't want to like, oh, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this and I got to do that. It just further triggers their system. But yeah, I think as women, especially, we're always looking at like, what more can we do and what more can we fix and how can we be this and how can we be that? It's like, no, girl, you are golden as is. And if you can remember that, like my job is to help you reconnect to the love within, to the light within, to the gold within, to the enoughness within. And from there, magic just tends to unfold, but it's a grounding practice really first, right? Anybody, whether you're in trauma or not, it's like, let's just feel our feet on the ground and get in our body first and take a breath. Like we're
Yeah.
here. And in this
Yeah.
very moment, we're okay. Yeah.
Definitely.
So I wish we're going to need to have a part two because I want to go deep on the marriage stuff because midlife marriage is just kicking my ass lately as well. And I mean, I learned just this is like in more recent development for me in the last few years that like my partner is part of my healing journey and my partner is the mirror to that in which is ready to convert back to love. Not the one that's going to fix that or make that happen, but the one that's going to mirror that. And that is life's work. Like that is people don't even realize like that is two wounded beings healing together and mirroring each other's sore spots over and over again. And you can either do it together. I guess the one question I want to ask, and then we'll wrap up, is as you were writing your books, like, did you go first? Did you decide I'm going to heal? And then that started to feed into the marriage, or was it a conscious decision together? How did the writing of the books play a role in the healing process in your marriage? Did it trigger it?
Well, again, I feel like spirit gave me the tools before everything really started to fall apart. So I'd written Mantras Made Easy. So I had done a solid 2 to 3 mantra practice a day. I was like, I would walk my dog with my mala beads and I would chant around the same loop in my neighborhood with my dog every morning.
Mm.
And one of my chants, I'll just leave everybody on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, I love a cliffhanger, girl.
Okay. One of my chants was a chant, tell me the truth, basically, is that chant. I want to know the truth.
Oh.
When I was done with that 90-day practice, within a couple weeks, the truth was revealed.
Whoa. Whoa. To you from him or to you from spirit?
Let's just say I found out the truth.
Oh, girl, juicy. Y'all are gonna have to go get the book. Which book is that one? Which one is
That's
that one?
That's emotional detox.
Okay, but didn't you write several emotional detoxes?
Yeah, it just is emotional detox, 7 steps to release toxicity and energize joy. That's
Okay.
the white cover with all the colors. And then I wrote the one for anxiety after. So, and then I wrote Emotional Detox Now, which is 135 guided emotional detox practices. And then, yeah.
So how many books have you written?
So Just As Spirit's my 11th book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And how old were you when you started your writing career?
How old was I? Well, Mackenzie, how old is Mackenzie? She was snapping. So I probably started writing at 2010. Okay. Yeah, because she was still napping. And then I published in 2012. So how old I was? Well, I had her at 37. And then, so she was born when I was 37. Okay. And so I'm 54 now.
So 37-ish?
So I didn't do it right away. I started writing probably when she was about a year.
So almost 40.
Almost 40. Yeah.
Oh, that's so inspiring to know that we can step into.
Oh God, yeah.
We can step into.
That's just when it gets good.
Yeah. I mean, that's extraordinary. That's very cool. Very, very cool. So if you're a writer and you've been wanting to write and you know that you've got a message to get out, let this nudge you that it is always the right time to start expressing in that way. That's so beautiful. And so tell us about your latest book and where people can connect with you.
Yeah. So Just Spirit, again, I've been kind of talking about it. It's that cleanse process, but it's going to take you into channeling, into receiving, guiding, also healing. You don't have to always ask for something. You can also just receive the healing that comes in. And so that book, and it's like a journaling kind of book too, the part 3 of that. That they can find it anywhere, Just Ask Spirit, where all books are sold. My website, sheriannaboyle.com. I do have a Just Ask Spirit community where we practice. So if once they get the book, they're going to want to practice. And I
Mm-hmm.
give feedback in that. It's virtual, helping people. This again, it's the container,
Mm-hmm.
creating a container where you're led and guided in a way. And it's about, again, I'm not giving you messages in that you're getting your own messages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you finally open yourself up to that and say yes to that, it's pretty amazing what starts coming in pretty fast. And then when you start, like, you get curious, you want to use tools. Let's end with this. If there was one thing that you could share with the listener about spirit, what would you leave them with today?
Well, it's the infinite. You're tapping into the infinite. There are no endings. There are no beginnings with spirit. You're learning to live your life from infinite. That means you have infinite potential. That means you have infinite wisdom, infinite strength, infinite healing, infinite love, possibilities. So just know if you're ready for that, if you want to stay in the finite, go for it. But it's not very much fun.
So there's a synchronicity in every single podcast. I mean, lately it's been off the charts. Like, I had a reading on a Sunday, and then I had an interview with a guest on Monday, and the guest on Monday said like 7 of the exact same statements of the reading that I had the day before. And they're both going to be on the podcast. But my word of the year is infinity.
Oh, look at you with the infinity sign. I have the chills. Yeah, there's no accident with that one.
The better it gets, the better it gets. That's my word of the year, and that's our synchronicity for today, my love.
I
Now
just
I
got a
know what.
little I like a vibrational rush from you. So thank you for that, right? And that's the other
Oh,
thing. When you connect to spirit, you bless other people.
that's right.
Your
That's
connection just made my energy go up when you shared that. I'm just like, whew, you just
so beautiful. Well, I'm
beautiful.
so glad that we've connected. I'm so glad to be in your world. I can't wait to read this book. And I'm going to go backwards. I got to know the marriage story. I got to know how to
Yeah,
help
I'm not
raise his
telling that story.
kids. I got to know all the things, bitch. I'm about to go on a deep dive with you, and I'll keep you posted on how that's going. But for today, thank you so much, my love, for spending time with us and bringing your beautiful energy to this show. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank
Yeah.
you.
To the beautiful listener, I hope that you found a little nugget in here that you can weave into your world. And I will see you same time, same place next week. Hey, you, Brooke Jean here with Brooke Jean Unperfected. I'm a licensed professional counselor, coach, mama, and your keep it real guide to the freedom that's available to you in a life unperfected. If you're a high achieving, perfectionistic, often anxious woman feeling stuck, frozen, and maybe even downright frustrated, you're in the right place. If you're anything like me, you've done everything society told you to do that would promise you success. You've got the job, you've got the husband, you've got the car, you've got the vacations, you've got the 401k, and yet underneath it all, when you're really honest with yourself, you're deeply disconnected and unfulfilled. Here is where we talk about letting go of who you think you're supposed to be so that you can get busy creating a life that you actually love. Everything healing, revealing, and rising is on the table. And we don't hold anything back around here. So buckle up, babe, because you are entering a vortex of your most juicy transformation. One where we dethrone perfectionism so you can access more energy, creativity, and vitality. I am so happy and grateful that you are here.